think we're about ready to get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dave Gottwald. I'm the chair of the Borah Symposium Committee. I'm joining you from the College of Art and Architecture, where I'm an associate professor. The committee considered a wide range of topics for this year's event. Given Putin's ongoing war against Ukraine, we felt it was important to take a fresh look at international cooperation. What are the challenges to global democracy in the face of rising autocratic governments? How can we reevaluate our preconceptions? And how might we avoid similar conflicts in the near future? Ukrainian President Zelensky, having just visited the UN days ago to plea for peace, makes this topic all the more timely. Thank you to those who have already spoken this week: Fiona Hill in conversation with our own Professor Kenton Bird on Monday evening, and Professor David Koplow for his talk at yesterday's Renfrew Colloquium. We'd also like to express our gratitude to committee member Dakota Robertson for inviting Ms. Hill to campus. And thanks to the Kenworthy Theater for hosting our documentary screening last night on the invasion of Ukraine. The committee also wishes to sincerely thank the President's Office, the Office of the Provost, the Martin Institute, and the Program in International Studies for their ongoing support. Special thanks as well to Bill L. Smith, who is the Borah Foundation's director, and to Roro Afechow, who makes all of this possible. And of course, thanks to all of you for attending our closing plenary address. Dr. Diane Kelly Riley is Vice Provost for Faculty and a Professor of English at the University of Idaho. She researches issues of assessment, student learning outcomes for writing and critical thinking, and is a former editor of the Journal of Writing Assessment. Diane also leads the Company Town Legacy Project, which is an ongoing public digital humanities effort that documents what happens to a company town when that company leaves. She earned her doctorate in educational psychology from Washington State University and lives with her family outside Potlatch, Idaho. Please join me in welcoming Vice Provost for Faculty, Diane Kelly Riley.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Gottwald. Good evening, and welcome to the 76th Annual Borah Symposium. I have the honor of introducing our plenary speaker tonight, and before I do that, I want to express my appreciation to everyone involved in organizing this event. Bill Smith and his team at the Borah Foundation put in many hours throughout the year to make this event a special occasion on our campus. Their work truly honors the legacy of Idaho Senator William Borah, whose advocacy for peace knew no bounds. He once said, quote, "Lord, if I only could have talked with Hitler, all of this might have been avoided." The Borah Symposium has a tremendous legacy of enriching our community with discussion of war and peace. Over the years, we've welcomed a long list of incredibly diverse and accomplished speakers who bring unique insights on this vital topic. The symposium has welcomed Nobel Peace Prize winners like Betty Williams, heads of state such as F.W. de Klerk, and prominent figures like Thurgood Marshall and Frank Church. So we're privileged to have another prominent figure from our great state deliver our plenary address tonight. Governor Dirk Kempthorne has dedicated his career to serving Idaho and our country. After serving as mayor of Boise for 7 years, Kempthorne was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1992. He was elected governor of Idaho in 1998 and was reelected in 2002. In 2006, Governor Kempthorne was confirmed as Secretary of the Interior for President George W. Bush. Following his career in public service, Governor Kempthorne served as president and CEO of the American Council of Life Insurers from 2010 to 2018, and he continues serving as the chair of the USS Idaho Commissioning Committee Advisory Board and on the board of directors for the Peregrine Fund. Governor Kempthorne actually got his start in politics right here at the University of Idaho, where he used to practice his political speeches in the field of cows out over the Wallace dormitories. He was also the president of ASUI, and we're really proud that he and his wife Patricia are both University of Idaho alums. So please join me in welcoming our Borah Symposium plenary speaker, Governor Dirk Kempthorne.
Vice Provost, thank you, Diane, very much for the introduction. To all of you, what a pleasure to be with you. Ro, Bill, Dave, the role which all of you play. Dakota Robertson, thank you for nominating me to be a guest speaker here this evening. I appreciate your work with students, including your efforts in the Sudan. Mr. Mayor, I know you were here the mayor of Moscow, and I know that Tanner, the president of the AHY, is here, as well as many of the senators and the vice president, Peyton, and your wonderful department heads. What an impressive group of young people. It inspires me. I appreciate it greatly. I met with a number of the students earlier this evening. The questions they asked, very insightful, sincere, courteous, and right on target. Very impressive. I'm going to begin with an affirmation. The affirmation is this: some of the absolute best years of my life were here at the University of Idaho as a student. I love my time here. I have such fond memories of what I experienced when I was here as a student. And speaking of love, I will tell you something else that's rather ironic. I'm now on the stage where I met Patricia Merrill, who was to become my wife. Last week marks our 46th wedding anniversary. And although we had both after graduation moved back to Boise, when we decided to be married, we wanted to be married in Moscow, and so it was on top of Moscow Mountain at sunrise. I don't think there's a more beautiful cathedral than God's creation outdoors. I remember one point, fast forward, as governor, Patricia's first lady, and I said to her, standing in the Capitol Rotunda, Patricia, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think we'd be standing here like this together? And she said, sweetheart, you're never in my wildest dreams. Also, this is the wonderful facility where the pink tea is held. And I talked to Haley about this. I mean, I guess you get 500 people here for the pink tea. Patricia is your hostess for that event. The Women's Imaging Center is the Patricia Kempthorne Imaging Center at Gritman Hospital, which I think is great. You get together for the tea. One night after a long day, I went to make myself a drink. And I found that there were these martini glasses with, in pink lettering, it says pink tea. I looked further into the glassware. There were old fashions. There were other glassware. I didn't find a teacup, okay? I think you ladies do not drink a lot of tea at the pink tea, but it's good, it goes for a great cause. As a student, I stayed here every summer. I didn't leave. And I always found a meaningful job. One year, for example, I was an orderly at Gritman Hospital. And if you want to really get a sense of a community where you live, become a caregiver in a community. This is a wonderful community, Mr. Mayor. You can be very proud of that and how you support the students at the University of Idaho. I also, then one summer, was gainfully employed full-time as AHY president. And Tanner, I think you can affirm to everybody, it is a full-time job. I'm the student that went to every one of the living groups and asked them if we wanted to assess ourselves a student fee to put the dome on the stadium. Went to 50 living groups, and there was strong consensus, yes, let's do this. And so I went to the Board of Regents, they were holding it in Twin Falls, and I made the presentation, and the president of the Regents said, this is the first time ever students have come forward and asked to have their fees increased. And I said, we do it for the betterment of the university, but also for the governance of the facility. And it was passed, and we're very proud of the Kibbe Dome and the great victory we had last Saturday with the Vandals. You know, I remember a lot of different things that would happen here during the summer when other students were gone. I'd go fishing at Spring Valley Reservoir. I'd see Sid Dunk come out there. He'd teach me how to fish with marshmallows, did a great job. I remember one time, it was August, '74, and the teletype, you know, the UPI and AP, 10 bells. You never hear that. So I got up from my office, went down the hall, looked at the teletype, and was announcing that Richard Nixon would be resigning. Quite a historic moment. I remember, too, that there were different things that took place here. I remember we had great speakers. You referenced, Diane, some of them. But you have the Borah Symposium. You have the McClure Center. And Catherine, we thank you for all the work that you do there. The Bellwood series. So one time we had Antonin Scalia here, Supreme Court Justice. What a wonderful man. And we had a series of meetings, as I had earlier today. We did that with Justice Scalia. And then I took him to the hotel, give him some downtime. I decided to take a couple of my staff members. We went to the Corner Club. 3 p.m. All right. We get out of the car, and you can hear the music playing and the banter. It was cheerful, wonderful sounds coming from the Corner Club. As we walked through the door, being the only ones in suits, the music stopped and it went silent. It was like a scene from the Old West when the gunfighter walks in. We went and sat at a table, and a gentleman, perhaps in his 50s, with Oshkosh overalls and a toothpick, walks over to me and he goes, "You who we think you are?" And it was kind of like, Ted Lasso, depends on who you think I am. He said, "You're Kempthorne." I said, "I am." "Thought so." And then he gave this nod. The music came back on, the banter came back up, and a bucket of Rainier beer showed up. About 10 minutes later, a young student comes over and he said, "Governor, I know I should be in class, and I've had a beer, but my fraternity brothers would not believe it if you'd play shuffleboard with me." So we played a little shuffleboard, all right? That's Idaho. That's Idaho. I got to know Antonin Scalia through other events. He'd say to me, "Call me Nino." I always called him Justice. But someone he referenced was his, quote, pal, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Another fine person. And they were pals. I remember Gary Michael, who was acting president at one point. She was then the speaker. She said, "President Michael, would you be so kind as to get me a glass of white wine with 1 ice cube?" I thought, that's classy. To know what you want and to just say it. There's an opera that was written about Antonin Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I wish we had that kind of harmony again in Washington, D.C., instead of the discourse which we're seeing now. So what I thought I would like to do in this opportunity to speak with you is to give you some behind-the-scenes information. What actually takes place? When we watch it on the news, social media, you'll get a 60-minute segment on something that happened. But I thought you might find it interesting to know what goes on in addition to the 60 seconds that you see, okay? I'm going to tell you what the process is to become a cabinet member. I'd like to tell you how a decision is made at that level. And then I'd like to talk to you about what do you do when there is zero cooperation between a government and an entity, in this case between the United States of America and the Taliban in Afghanistan, and a few other examples. So how do you become a cabinet member? I was in the State House working when my secretary came in and said, "Governor, there's an individual on the telephone from the White House would like to speak to you." So I took the call. And this very pleasant voice said, "Would you like to meet with the President of the United States?" I said, "Yes, I would." She said, "Can you be here tomorrow?" I said, "No, I can't." And I honestly could not because of commitments I'd made with the National Guard. I had to fulfill those. She said, "When can you be here?" I said, I can be there next week." There was a silence, but then she said, "Okay, we'll see you then." I think I learned later you're not supposed to say that when the president wants to see you. But I arrived in Washington, D.C. the next week. I called the White House. I said, I am in town. They said, great, the president wants to see you today. The vice president also wants to see you. The chief of staff also wants to see you. And Karl Rove will want to visit with you as well. I thought, this is going to be a busy day. So I went to the White House and I arrived at 11 o'clock. I'm shown into the Oval Office, and there's President George W. Bush and Vice President Cheney and Andy Card and Karl Rove, all four of them. And you know the traditional two chairs in front of the fireplace where you see the press conferences? Well, that's where I was seated next to the president. And for the next 25 minutes, he absolutely peppered me with questions. What do you think about this? Why would that happen? Would you do this? If this happened to you, I mean, they call him the interrupter-in-chief. It was a barrage of questions. And suddenly he says, I want you to do it, yes or no. And I had to play back, I want you to do what? And then realizing that the cabinet post at Interior was vacant, I knew he had just asked me to do it. But it was not under the situation of, call your wife. You guys talk about it tonight. Get back to me in the morning. No. I want you to do it, yes or no. And I know what our expectations are when we have young people that have been asked to serve their nation. There's one response, and it is yes. I said yes. He said, great. He grabbed my hand, shook it. We stood up, pulls out his appointments calendar, and he said, we're going to announce it today. Can you be back at 5? I said, yes, sir. The vice president, Andy Card, said, wait a minute. You know, usually we need to vet these things, take a few days. He says, no, we're doing it today. I left the Oval Office. I got a phone. I called my wife, and I said, I think you should watch the news tonight. I go back to the White House, to the Oval Office. 6 hours later, he and I walk into the Oval Office. It is filled with the national media and international media. And he introduces this individual as his next Secretary of the Interior. That's how fast it goes, friends. You talk about having your life changed quickly. The interview process, going before different committees, 22 different senators asked me a variety of questions. I had staff make note of that. That would be my to-do list for the next 6 months. Get job done. So that's how you become a cabinet member. So at that level, what's it like to then get a decision made? Well, here's what I found. I inherited a very controversial issue, and it was international in its scope. And it was whether or not the polar bear should be listed as an endangered species. We had countries, Russia, Norway, many countries weighing in on the issue. The White House made it very clear I was not to list the bear. When I say they made it very clear, for the next few months, I would be invited to the White House, to the Roosevelt Room, to meet with the advisors. They never extended me the courtesy to let me bring one member of my staff, chief of staff or the leading staff member, principal only. And again, they made it very clear, under no circumstances do you list that bear. So I said to Mark Myers, who was head of U.S. Geological Survey under my authority, I said, Mark, what is your recommendation to me? And he said, sir, I don't know. And I said, that's a terrible thing to tell me. He said, I've not been instructed to go delve into this. I said, you just were instructed. So he goes into this, and it takes a few weeks. He comes back with a report that is probably 300 pages thick, okay? I will tell you, I didn't do well in chemistry or physics when I was at the U of I. That's why I went into poli-sci. But I read that report. Sometimes I had to read the same page a few times. I also then had NASA weigh in and give me all the satellite imagery, et cetera, et cetera. I then called, on a particular day, Josh Bolton, who was then Chief of Staff. And I said, Josh, it's time for a decision. And he said, I agree. Can you come over immediately? I said, yes. So I'm whisked over to the White House, to the West Wing. I go into the Chief of Staff's office. He asked Joel Kaplan, the Assistant Chief of Staff, Joel, would you please excuse us? He said, certainly. And Josh said, I don't want any witnesses. I said, I agree. He closes the door. I said, Josh, I know the decision you want from me, but I cannot and I will not give you that decision. I did not resign as the governor of a sovereign state to come here to take an oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and to support that president and have a bunch of 30-year-old advisors with no real-world experience tell me what my decision is and I'm simply to put my name on it. I will not do it, but you have every right to have somebody else in my position carry out your order. He said, hang on. I don't want another Saturday night massacre. And I thought, how ironic, referencing Watergate, the 10 bells. And I'm standing there and he's thinking that I could instigate another Saturday night massacre. I think he suspected, and he was correct. I had my letter of resignation in my coat pocket. It was not an acidic letter of resignation. It was laudatory to the president and the First Lady. I just wasn't going to carry out that order. He said, I am stumped. What I will have to do is take it to the President of the United States tonight, and you must prepare yourself to be fired in the morning. And I said, so be it. That's how we left it. Be prepared to be fired in the morning. And I'm going to tell you, in all honesty, I slept soundly. Soundly, because I was at peace. Had I caved in, knowing that in 48 hours I'd walk up to some podium and I would read words that I did not believe, I don't think I'd ever sleep again. The next morning, this is a direct quote from the president. I am inclined to agree with my advisors, but what is most important to me is the comfort of my secretary. He backed me 100%. I issued that it is a threatened species, no question about it. I listed it as such. 5 major lawsuits came from that. We won every one of them. It was the right decision. And now let me talk about another issue, and that is when there is no cooperation. My son Jeff, and Butch, you'd referenced Jeff, and I appreciate that. Jeff called me and he said, Dad, somebody has sent to me a social media link, and there's someone that's making a plea for help. And I said, what are they asking for, Jeff? And he said, Dad, they want help to evacuate Americans and Afghan allies out of Afghanistan. The United States had just withdrawn from Afghanistan. I will say this. I believe that we did need to get out of Afghanistan. I totally disagree with how they did it. So I said to Jeff, it's a social media thing. I mean, who knows if there's any basis to this, what the extent of it is? He said, yeah, but Dad, maybe you could help him. I said, Jeff, I tell you what, call the individual, don't identify yourself, but ask him the following questions. I'd given him a handful of questions. He called and asked those questions. My son calls me back. He said, here's what he said. I thought about it. I said, all right, Jeff, let me think about this. So then the next day, I called that individual who was listed also. Again, no identification. I asked him a series of questions. He answered them forthrightly. I thanked him. I called him a second day, and I called him a third day. Again, no identification, but he answered every question. On the third day, at the end of the conversation, I said, Mr. Musa, he was Naveed Musa, 30-year-old Afghan-American. I said, Mr. Musa, I will help you. My name is Dirk Kempthorne. He said, my God, Governor Kempthorne? I said, yes. He said, I've been waiting for somebody to help me. I said, let's see what we can do. We then added to that group of two other individuals, Dan Nelson, a Green Beret major, and Joe Forney, West Point graduate and commander of the 101st Airborne, both who had served in Afghanistan, both who had had interpreters and Afghan allies stand with them, shoulder to shoulder, in some very dire situations. So the four of us went to work to try and evacuate people that were being hunted by the Taliban. This was dicey, it was dangerous. The people were in absolute dire straits. We began intercepting lists and receiving lists. To tell you how it had become so disgruntled, I was getting calls from 3- and 4-star generals and admirals saying, can you please get these people out? We had no government relations. And I'll be honest with you, I had to fight our own government for the next few months. I will put a footnote and say, I found that I was not fighting the career people at the State Department. I think their hearts were with us. But some of the appointed people had turned their back on what we were trying to do. I knew that we needed help, and I knew that I didn't have the help of our United States government. So I reached out and I called the government of Mexico. And I asked the government of Mexico, can you provide political asylum to the individuals on my manifest? 24 hours later, they called me back and said, we are granting political asylum to those on your list. Think of this, folks. A manifest, different pages, where you have Americans, Afghan allies. At the bottom of each page is the official stamp of the government of Mexico, signed by their ambassador in Tehran, providing protection for the people on the list. I also called the president of Palau. I said, if necessary, can we bring them to you? He said, yes, you can. Now, I think I can just footnote this and say, Mexico, how's that come about? Well, cooperation. One of the things I had to do as Secretary of the Interior was to line the All-American Canal. Some of you may know that. It's a major, major waterway down through Southern California. The Secretary of the Interior is the water master of the Colorado River. But by lining the All-American Canal, I stopped the seepage of any water, which is a major source of water for agriculture to Mexico just across the border. Arturo Sorocan, the ambassador to the United States from Mexico, came to me. It's the first time I met him. He said, Mr. Secretary, you've cut off our water. You will destroy our agricultural economy just south of the border. Please, please help us. I have never seen such sincerity in the eyes of an individual. And I said, we will help. And he and I devised a program that delivers so many acre-feet of water to that region of Mexico. It's the first time ever that an agreement between a cabinet member and an ambassador was later ratified by our respective governments. That's why when I think I called and asked for help, they remembered what cooperation was. The President of Palau, same thing. The Secretary of the Interior is the administrative authority for the freely associated states. Saipan, American Samoa, Palau, Marshall Islands, much of the South Pacific, because after World War II, when the Navy had authority, it was transferred to Interior. And we did things for people in Palau, and they remembered cooperation. I also called Jim Risch, our senator from Idaho, Republican, and I called Jack Reed, the Armed Services Chairman, Democrat. I've served with both of them. Both are friends. I asked each of them to make one phone call. I asked Jim if he'd call Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, and I asked Jack Reed if he would call Secretary Blinken with one request: please give permission for the aircraft that I may commission to land in Abu Dhabi of the UAE. It was very important. We received permission. During all of this, Naveed had organized in Afghanistan a series of safe houses. Many families would have to be in the same house. And then at odd hours of the day and night, I would be contacted. A voice would tell me, the Taliban are going to the following districts. You must move your people now. They're going door to door. I would call Naveed, Naveed would call them, and we'd shift them to a different safe house. We could never go back to the same safe house. We taught them what a phone tree is. When we call one, you call three, you three call three, and we quickly get the word out. We ultimately moved our people from Kabul to Mazar-e-Sharif. There was not as intense of Taliban presence there, but still dicey. I was then asked by our government, do you have a manifest? I said, yes, I do. We need you to give us the manifest. I said, are you going to give the manifest to the Taliban? And the response was, probably. I said, then I will never, ever give you that manifest. Because on the manifest is the name of the individual, the spouse, and the children, and what the individual did for the United States of America in the war on terror, and where they were currently located. Can you imagine giving that to the Taliban? So we selected a date. We said, this will be the day that we will tell all of our people to go to the desert, and we'll have 8 buses waiting for them. We also lined up an Airbus 340 that can hold 345 people. Then I received another list. We were maxed out on the Airbus 345. And it just hit me. It hit me in the heart. I was so frustrated. I have 50 more people, and I have no capacity to help them. And I thought, you cannot leave them behind. You cannot knowingly leave them behind. And I hit the wall. And I guess, without thinking, I knelt down on one knee and I said a prayer. And I said, dear God, I do not know what to do now, but we cannot leave them behind. And I had this immediate image. Sorry. I had this immediate image. And it was Mother Mary holding the infant Jesus on the burro as they're traveling. And I jumped up and I called Naveed. I said, Naveed, that is it. Children do not need seats. They can be in their parents' arms. He called the airline. They said, yes, we'll work with you. We put kids up to age 4 appropriately in the arms of the parents, and we put 50 more people on that aircraft, 395. And here's something I want to point out, and that is, you say, well, that's a very wonderful Christian image. What you need to know also is, in the Quran, is an entire chapter on the Mother Mary. They revere her also. This was a shared vision. So then, we're ready to implement this whole operation. Ran into one more snag. We've now gathered $1 million to do this. Not a penny from our government, from the private sector that believes promises made are promises kept. So we're now going to shift the money to an airline and other resources in Afghanistan that are agreed to help us. And the bank believes we're doing money laundering. So we had to withdraw all our funds and put them in a different bank and then wire them immediately. What I would tell you is, Naveed and I sat there, I think it was 3 a.m. our time, watching all of this in real time happening. Even the people on the plane will tell you later, they just didn't know if the plane would ever really be allowed to take off. But it did. It finally cleared Afghan airspace, landed in Abu Dhabi. And last month, we got the last of the 395 either into the United States or Canada. They are all safe. So, a couple other quick things. And then I'd like to open this up to questions. Soviet Union is dissolved. We now have Russia. Yeltsin. I'm a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee at the time, and we get a call from the Duma, which is the Russian equivalent of Congress, and they said, we have never ever had civilian control of the military. Would you please come and tell us, as members of the Armed Services Committee of the United States, how do you do this? And so 5 of us were sent to Russia. There are the pockmarks and holes from the cannon fire that had been shot there at their facility. Sam Nunn from Georgia was the chair at the time. John Glenn, Jim Exon from Nebraska, Dan Coates, who was President Trump's intelligence director, and myself. We're there at their invitation. They have all the media, the Russian media, filming this for their nightly news. And every meeting begins with them deriding the United States of America, pointing at us, chastising the United States of America. We came there to help them. And they just rip us. We sit politely, waiting to respond. And then when it's our point to respond, Sam Nunn begins and waits for the interpreter, and the people that had just given it to us said, oh, no, we don't need an interpreter, we speak English. Well, the media, the TV crews got what they wanted. They left, and then we had these nice meetings. Next morning, same thing. Boom, 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 you bad United States of America. Media gets it, and they go home. Nice meetings. That night, because we're going to leave the next day, that night we got an inquiry. Would you meet with some of their leaders, but in a different location, 1 hour earlier? Yes, of course. So we go into their meeting, not knowing what we're going to get. You know what they asked us? Tell us about your God. Tell us about your God. And so 5 United States senators tell them that every Wednesday, and this still goes on to this day, Every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. in the U.S. Capitol, senators will gather in a small group for prayer breakfast. One will lead the discussion, talking about a higher power, different views of what a higher power may be, what your religion might be. But then we would always conclude and we'd stand and we'd all hold one another's hand. Republican, Democrat, it did not matter. Male, female. And somebody would give the prayer. When we finished that meeting with those Russians, you know what they said? May we stand and close it as you do in the Capitol. So we stood, American, Russian, and someone said a prayer. I don't know where those Russians may be today. They may be like some of the other high-ranking Russians that have simply disappeared. But I want to tell you, where there's humanity, there is hope. One other example, and that is that, again, a few of us were sent to Asia. We met in China, but also in Vietnam. And before we left on that trip, I went to the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C., and I bought, the coffee table book on the Vietnam Wall, and it shows the things that have been left over the years. They're so touching, and some of it's gut-wrenching of what they've left and the messages they've left. And on the flight, which was actually on the same airplane that you see at the Reagan Library, that Air Force One, I said to the other 5 senators, I said, I'm going to present this to Secretary Doe, Ho Chi Minh's successor. And they said, that's a bad idea. I said, no, I want them to know this many years after the war, what it still means to us, that it still touches our heart. And I said, I've signed it. Y'all want to sign? They said, no. So anyway, there we are in Ho Chi Minh's former office, Secretary Doe, and now it's time to wrap it up. We all stand. That's when I say, holding the book out, I said, Secretary Doe, in my country, when you say Vietnam, we think of war. And I wanted to show you this book and the pictures that are within it because it denotes to you what that meant to us. The 58,200 names that are inscribed, the missing in action, and the flags that we fly for them. He took the book from me and he said, this is the most precious gift I could receive because it affirms to us that the people that we were fighting are people of honor and value that loved their warriors as much as we loved ours. The fact that you still care, knowing that we too have missing in action and still care, you don't know what this has meant to bridge our understanding and appreciation of one another. I said, thank you, Mr. Secretary. 5 senators all grabbed their pens and signed the book. I say this to you good folks because it's stuff you don't get to see in the press. It's behind the scenes, but it shows you humanity, you see. And again, I'm going to reiterate that where there's humanity, I think there's hope. But you cannot be passive about it. Sometimes you just got to grab it and be the instrument of hope and stand up and do what is right, regardless of the consequences. And when you do so, I think that other leaders, whether it's in institutions or communities or countries, will respect it. And they will remember when there was good cooperation that helped them. It pays dividends later. I'm going to conclude my remarks by going back to my first statement of the affirmation. Some of the best days of my life were here at the University of Idaho. I know what it is to be a student here. It is fulfilling, enriching, and the friendships you make. I say that because 4 wonderful students had their lives ripped from them and were taken from us. Kaylee, Madison, Xana, Ethan. No one can explain it, but it occurred. I felt I have to acknowledge in tribute to them. And I appreciate greatly the honorarium which has been offered to me for being a speaker tonight. But Patricia and I made the immediate decision that the entire honorarium is to go to the Healing Garden in the names of those 4 magnificent kids. So, Bill, I'm happy to respond to questions, but that's what I had to tell you. I hope it was some value added to give you a behind-the-scenes look. And I think there's actually still some good in this world. Okay?
Thank you, Governor. Yes, I'm reminded that although our theme for this year's symposium is World on the Edge, and there were several examples about things that are troublesome in the world, that we can end on a note of hope as well. But that should not preclude any hard questions that you might have. We have microphones at either end of the stage. We'd certainly invite folks to come up and ask questions. We have about 20 minutes for Q&A. Please identify yourself and keep your questions brief, if you would, and we'll endeavor to answer them. All right, we're gonna give the student the first crack, and then we'll come to this side afterwards. Please.
Hi, I'm Nate Little. Thank you for your wonderful talk. I absolutely loved it. I wish I could have been here for the previous ones, but
Thank you.
luckily my friend told me about this one and I was able to show up.
Thank you.
What throughout your life really inspired you to pursue such a career, such as significant as yours?
Well, that's a nice comment. I appreciate it greatly. I think I've always looked at a situation and asked myself, have we reached our full potential, or can something else be done that is the better for the better good? I'd mentioned to some of the students earlier this evening that when I was contemplating at age 34 to run for mayor of Boise, I was told by political experts, quote, "That is a dumb idea. Do not do it. No mayor of Boise has been successful. It's a dead-end job. Downtown is dead. And if you ever to run for something statewide, you'll carry the anti-Boise stigma." Okay, I took their advice and ran for mayor. For this reason, my motivation was real simple. I had 2 little kids, my son and my daughter, and they lived in a city that had such huge potential, but it was being throttled. And I thought, if the extent of my public service is to provide a community that we can proudly turn over to our kids, that's all I need. That was my motivation. It worked. We turned it around. It became an award-winning city. Then when I ran for a statewide office, it wasn't anti-Boise. It was kind of proud. That was their capital city. This guy turned it around. So I think if you're sincere and pure in your motive, other doors, if they open, so be it. But don't think you're the guy that's got to kick them all in. I have friends that would, I can tell you, they had the idea of manifest destiny. They would be this position, this and this, and it never happened because I think they kept taking their eye off the ball.
Yeah. So essentially keep your eye on the ball and just be honest and sincere within your motivations.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. What are you studying?
I am an electrical engineering major, but I am taking a class in international relations and international political economy. I thought it would really give me some perspective
Yeah.
on the world.
Man, good for you.
Thank you.
It's like the Peregrine Fund, one of the things we're doing. Mongolia, it's like the transmission lines. We're electrocuting the birds of prey. But because of what we've been doing in Boise with Idaho Power, we're now doing the same installations there and saving birds of prey, which is really cool. You're going to need to talk to him, Dakota.
Here you go.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah, I'm Dan, class of 74. Hi, Dirk.
Hi, Dan. Hey, Dan.
Yeah, Dirk.
Dan. You know what? I love seeing you. We were in Whitman Hall together, and he'd always be leaned down in the hallway. And, you know, he'd say, quiet down, I'm trying to study. Well, he wasn't studying at all. All right, what's up, my friend?
I won't tell you what he'd been doing.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you have any advice for our youngsters in the crowd or anybody else, what an individual can do to help moderate the mess we have right now politically.
Yeah. It's a valid question.
Thank you.
Yeah, valid question. Number one, don't subscribe to it and buy into it. Determine where you should get your information, and then double check it to see if it's accurate. But in your own, if the ASUI, for example, if you were to operate the way that the Congress is, half of you wouldn't like each other. I think you actually like each other. I currently serve on boards of directors. It is really nice to be part of an organization where all of us are working for the good of the company, for the shareholders. And I thought if you were to somehow draw an imaginary line in the corporate boardroom and say, okay, this team, we're going to call you red, and this team will be blue. And instead of a director being reappointed, let's chip in some money and say that he's been unreal with his decisions, he's had a bad agenda. That corporation will fail, okay? Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided cannot stand. We got to figure out how to stop the division, because I know of two entities, two individuals that love what's going on. And it's Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi. Okay? It's wrong. And at some point, we got to get this United States back to being united. So, Dan, you're right on target. But to the young people, don't buy into it, gang. How do we tell kids at elementary school not to be a bully when they see it on the news? You wonder at what point it just keeps coming down. So, make sure our school districts, we take care of kids, and everybody's important. So, yes, sir. Okay.
yeah, we're coming to the side here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Molly, and I was wondering, Governor, you've talked a lot about having to make difficult decisions and sticking by your gut on hard decisions. Are there any decisions you've made that you would make differently now? And how do you have the courage to stick by difficult decisions like that?
Yes, there's one vote I would take back. And it was a vote that was to allow Poland and Czechoslovakia to join NATO. Okay? When you think of what they've been through, they absolutely should be part of NATO. My problem was the timing of it, because Russia was extremely agitated against the timing of that. And what I had to say to myself was, what is my responsibility as a United States Senator for the well-being of the nation when the only other country that could destroy us is Russia? Is this really the time to put your finger in their eye by voting for the others? But again, I would now vote to have them enter NATO, which they're already there. I think the other thing, if I can expand that, is Mr. Putin. The last thing he expected was that with his invasion of the Ukraine, is that Finland and 833 miles will now be part of NATO? And Article 5, if he hits Finland, he's hit us? I don't think he expected that at all. I think he envisioned that when he invaded Ukraine, it would be similar to the U.S. invading Iraq. The Army would put their arms down, and in 48 hours, he'd be a conquering hero. Well, that has not happened. And I think we need to continue our resolve. So, good question. Okay, Tanner.
Yeah.
Hello, Governor. First off, I just want to say how impactful and inspirational your speech was, and thank you for speaking tonight.
Thank you.
Question I have for you, and aside from your experience in ASUI, what is one memory that has stuck with you that you'd like to share tonight? What is one of your favorite memories from being a student here at the University of Idaho?
You know, when I was ASUI president, again, I was independent. I lived in Whitman Hall, Wallace Complex. But the living groups would invite me to come have lunch or dinner. And for an independent, that was really special. I mean, you treated me, they treated me, with respect and fun. It was just great. And I would try to reciprocate and bring some of those leaders over to Wallace Complex. We had good food as well. So those were some of the good things. Was just the interaction with the kids and going and seeing the structure you have in a fraternity or sorority. We didn't have that, Dan. We were cobbled together, but somehow we competed. You know, nobody thought the independent could win against the Greeks, but we did. Ooh. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Tanner, you're doing a good job. Thanks, sir. Peyton, you're doing good at vice president. Okay.
We're over here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had no idea I was going to hear tonight about your involvement in helping those who helped us in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I had no idea of that story. Coincidentally, I got a text from a friend in Boise yesterday who was involved in helping Afghan women who have
yes.
made it to the U.S. as refugees. I may reach out to you about that afterwards.
Sure.
But also, thank you for all that you did for the downtown Boise Renaissance. I was the executive director of the DBA from 91 to 93. So thank you for teeing that up. Great success. My question is, you say we need to maintain our resolve in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I agree. It's looking doubtful that we're going to do that. What do you think the prospects are for Ukraine to maintain its resistance, and what happens if they're not able to? What do you foresee, and what do we do?
Well, it's a complicated 3D chess match that's going on right now. The United States needs to think carefully if we somehow back from our resolve, because what is the signal that sends to our NATO allies? And what is the next crisis where we may need the allies to have their faith in us? So that's a key point. If China, which we know wants Taiwan, watches, and the lesson learned is you can just grind the United States down, public opinion will switch, and in time we can have it. Add to that, China is now building 4 nuclear submarines per year. The United States is struggling to build 1.5. You may have read in the Lewiston Tribune, and Butch Alfred, I appreciate the coverage that your team gave to the crew of the USS Idaho when it was on the Snake River. But I just think there's so many elements to this that it has to be carefully decided, because whoever blinks first may be vulnerable.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for what you did with the DBA, Downtown Business Association. When I was elected mayor, the first thing that the victors wanted me to do was to fire everybody. And I said, if I do that, we have created immediately the critics. If we harness our future together, we're going to get something done. And I said, before we can build brick and mortar, we need to build cooperation. And so I blended them, and we built a city. Yes?
We're back on this
sorry.
side. Yeah,
Yep.
please.
Hi, Mr. Governor. My name is Jack Schneider, incoming freshman. Very excited for the upcoming 4 years.
And a new senator, right?
New senator, yes. Lots to look forward to. My question is very similar to that one, but I'll take it a step further. Whether you look at Ukraine and Russia or any of the other international conflicts that are going on, where do you personally draw the line of the United States' involvement in those issues when we have such serious issues in our own country?
Yeah. Well, number one, you better look at what you said. Not you, the country. What did we say we would do? What is our commitment to Taiwan? And then look at the role that Taiwan is playing, whether it's the microchips, et cetera, all of that. But what did we say to them? And I think what we should not do is get behind the curve in making sure that the armament that we should give them, get it to them now. Don't wait until there's a problem. The best way to preserve peace is to just be tough. If you talk to the crew of the USS Idaho, Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine, that is an elite group, 140 individuals. On that submarine, they carry 12 missiles and 12 torpedoes. They hope and pray they'll never fire them. But the fact that they're there and that the bad guys know that, they don't want to mess with the United States. So that's what I would say. What did we say we would do, and make sure we can fulfill our commitments, and then make sure you're tough. But don't saber rattle. Just be firm in what you say. But keep making sure you're strong. Thanks, Jack.
And we're going to take these other two questions, and then we'll conclude it after that point, and then invite folks to stay and ask additional questions informally if they'd like.
Yeah, sure.
So one each.
So this is a little bit short for me, so stick with me here. Governor Kempthorne, thank you for being here tonight. I was curious, in my opinion, one of the most profound educational experiences you can have is putting yourself out of your comfort zone. And what is a time during either your professional career or your educational career where something has changed your perspective and made you think about something differently than you had prior?
Okay, I'm going to do something for you.
Yeah, this is tough.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Can you get it? That's good.
Okay, that's the tough
Hit
part.
me once more.
Okay. Thank you for being here tonight, Governor Kempthorne. My question is, in what portion of your career or your educational experience did something change your perspective or put you out of your comfort zone to think differently than you had before?
Good question. I suppose when I went over to the White House to tell them I wasn't going to do it was not my comfort zone. Yeah, I was going to be fired. It would have been very public firing. But you know, sometimes you do something with honor. Okay. There were other times that, you know, one time when the legislature killed my initiative to fix the roads and bridges here to save lives, especially of kids on holiday, they killed it. And the media said, how do you feel? Your legislature just took your major initiative, it's dead. And I said, well, my mother and father taught me to believe in the golden rule and to practice it. But I think the legislature taught me sometimes you must simply rule. And so I took the next 8 pieces of legislation that they had passed, and it just needed my signature to become the law, and I vetoed every one of them. And I told the media, you come back, same time tomorrow, 8 more will get the same veto until they understand cooperation, which was the theme of tonight, and communication. Well, of all things, they resurrected my dead legislation. We've done 57 projects, and we're saving at least 100 lives a year. Out of my comfort zone? Yes. But I will throw myself on the sword on some of these issues because I think it's right. Now, that was political intrigue. What if they didn't resurrect my stuff? I had a lot of red ink. But we were going to go, I was ready to go toe-to-toe. So, good folks, you're going to run into that. You're going to run into that. Somebody's going to make you a job offer. But a second one just came in. Which one do you want? It may not be an easy decision. You may be in your new position, or you may be in some group when you're doing your master's thesis, and there's a student that you don't think is doing something that's appropriate. It ain't easy, but sometimes to realize that you do have a comfort zone, and if something goes off inside you that says this is not right, then it probably is not. And therefore, just, like I say, grab it. Do something about it that's positive. You'll sleep well at night. If not, call me.
Thank you, Governor.
You're welcome.
Hello, Mason. I'm an ASUI senator. So recently in the United States and abroad, we've had the phenomenon of populism kind of rearing its head again through left and right-wing circles. What would you personally advocate to kind of allay this and kind of put it back in its bed?
Yeah, Mason, I mean, it's a very valid question. It's probably one they're going to ask at the debate tonight. Yeah. But we've reached the point. That's why I made the point here. I called Jack Reed. He's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. We're not supposed to get along. Guess what? Friendship can overcome partisanship. There's still humanity in Congress and on Capitol Hill. I probably shouldn't tell you this example, but no, I won't. So how do you put it back in the bottle? Hopefully, we elect some people that are willing to enter their own comfort zone and be uncomfortable by saying and doing what's right for the country, and not just for their political party. How do you get there? By asking these questions, by going to the town hall meetings, by asking those that are running for your legislature or your city council. Are they a role model that you want your children to follow? Are they saying things? I'm amazed at some of the, I don't know what you call it now, X's? Is that what tweets are? You know? Yeah. I don't participate in those things. But I mean, they're vicious. I will go, you know, sometimes I'm looking at YouTube, and I love some of the human interest stories. And then I read the comments and how people slam them. I mean, I'm astounded by it. So somehow we got to put an end to the bullying that's happening everywhere, including social media and cable network news. I think we no longer have, and you won't know these names, Walter Cronkite, Huntley Brinkley, but I've wondered, you've seen the film of when President Kennedy was assassinated, and you see Jackie Kennedy on the back of the Lincoln Continental. And I'm wondering today if there would be discussion as to, was she going for help or was she fleeing? See? It's like no matter what you say anymore, I'm going to say the opposite because I'm of the other party. We don't go watch our news. We go to our collective locker room. You all go to MSNBC. You all go to Fox. Get along in the morning? No. Man, I could tell when my dad had had a dose of it. He'd call me and just, whew. I'd say, Dad, watch ESPN. But then golf goes with Saudi Arabia, you know. So, Mason, I haven't answered your question, except you've put your finger on it. But do your part in your corner of the world. Because we need leadership that will put an end to bullying and put forward statesmanship and for the greater good. As Abraham Lincoln again said, let us turn to our better angels. And may there still be angels out there. God bless you all. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you all for being here. Safe travels on your way home.
That's nice. Thank you very much. Hey, you know, I'll tell you something. Now it's over. But at the Corner Club, did I tell you what they did when we left? This was crazy. This is true. Okay, we're leaving. It's now like 4 in the afternoon. As I get up and we start out the door, everyone stood up and they sang, "Here We Have Idaho." When I'm getting in the car, I can still hear them singing. And then they came outside and waved. How many of you know "Here We Have Idaho"? Yeah. We need to teach the student body that song. Tanner? So here's what I'm thinking. At the end of a game, you got the band there. You got the Jumbotron. Just put the words up there and we'll all sing. Right? What? Do you know this? You want to sing it? Yeah. Do y'all want to sing it? Yeah, sure. All right, let's do it. Turn my mic off, though, please. I'm not that good. And here we have Idaho, winning her way to fame. Silver and gold in the sunlight blaze, and romance lies in her name. We'll go singing, singing of you, all proudly too. All our lives through we'll go singing, singing of you, all Idaho. Boom, boom, boom.